We are back here on the Lost Ogle Show with our special guest, State Representative Emily Virgin. Welcome to the Lost Ogle Show.
Hi, thanks.
Are you excited? This is your second time. You were like on I think our second or third episode, right?
Yeah, I mean, back when you were in what was that place called?
Our Bricktown. If you're familiar with
our
Bricktown.
digital studios.
yeah. Your Bricktown Digital Media Studio.
Look at that. Yes. We decided, because it was only about 100 square feet. So we, now that there's apparently a pandemic going on, we decided to, so we're like, we'll just kind of do this more convenient work at home and, type stuff, kind of like what you're doing. Let's jump in. You've already been vaccinated, right? You got your COVID vaccine, which is amazing. Cause I forget that you're 67, right? Is it 67 or 68?
Why did I come back on this show?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
I wonder if we were talking about that before you came on, actually. What was it like? Did you get any side effects or tell us about this whole process? Did you have to wait in long lines? Any of that?
No. So, no long lines. And I haven't seen really, I've seen a few places in Oklahoma County or a few times where people have had to wait in long lines. But for the most part, it seems like every vaccination site is keeping the lines to a minimum. But I did have a reaction to the shot. I mean, it just made me feel really crummy. So, my immune system recognized something.
Do you feel do you feel safer already? Or do you you feel like you're in a video game and you have an invincibility shield or something?
I mean, I wish, but you don't have the full protection until I think 10 days or 2 weeks after your second shot. So I'm not there yet. So I'm trying not to think that I have more protection than I really do. Still trying to, just stay home or most of the time, of course, wearing a mask. But it's tough at the time around a lot of people who don't want to wear a mask.
Yeah, what's up with that? I guess they were showing videos last week. I guess the abolitionist people were all there protesting.
They were there today.
No, they're probably there every day, I would imagine. In some fact, I think you work with half of them actually. They're your colleagues, but it is kind of a weird irony that you have these people who are hardcore pro-life, value life, when it's just a single cell organism and inside a woman. Yet whenever there's a raging pandemic going on, they're just screw life and I don't need a mask. This all bullshit anyway. I'm fine. God will protect me. It's I think we can all agree that's hypocritical, and we can also probably agree they don't really care that it's hypocritical, right?
No, there's not a whole lot of self-reflection there in that group that I've seen, in thinking that, hey, I care. I say that I about life and protecting people, some people, I guess, but not the people who work at the Capitol. We don't count. So yeah, it's pretty infuriating. I mean, today they were all in the 4th floor rotunda. There was a lot of yelling, which, hey, come to the Capitol, exercise your rights, whatever. But especially not wearing a mask and yelling in an enclosed space with lots of people just seems really, really inconsiderate, not very pro-life.
I can see why you got the vaccine. So, I mean, exactly. you were probably on the dark web looking for black market vaccines to get with that environment.
Yeah.
When you got the vaccine, did you beyond deep down, did you have any weird kind of concerns okay, this is okay, but was there anything in the back of your mind saying, oh, I hope this isn't some part of some global conspiracy, or I hope this is safe? Was any of that going through your head?
No, I'm one of those really weird people who trust science. So
wow.
I was pretty cool with it. I was very excited, to be honest. I was never been so pumped to get a shot in my life. And it's a lot of my fellow colleagues and I have been having discussions, because when we were offered the vaccine, it felt like there was something wrong with us getting the vaccine. And, I still feel a little conflicted about it, but ultimately I think that when you're offered the shot, you need to take it. And so that was sort of the thing that I told our caucus was, of course, this is a personal decision, and I wouldn't want to pressure anyone one way or the other, but also, we do have a duty to keep ourselves safe and to make sure that government can function. Also, not to be spreading the virus back into our communities, to not be a super spreader event each week at the Capitol, which is
right.
sort of what we're at risk of being. And so, it didn't feel great because there are so many people who were still trying to help get vaccine appointments because the supply is just really limited still. But, ultimately I came down on the side of, I want to be an example of when you're offered the vaccine, take it.
All things considered, Oklahoma seems like we're actually doing a better job than most other states getting people vaccinated. My theory is that's because we're in a state where you have a big chunk of people who don't want to get vaccinated, right? So maybe the demand isn't as high as like maybe more of our, more states that believe in science. But how would you kind of grade our state's handling of the vaccine so far?
Yeah, it's been one of the highlights of our pandemic response. I've been pretty critical of a lot of the decisions that have been made or actions that haven't been taken during the pandemic, but this has been one of the bright spots, is how well we've done on the vaccine rollout. And what the measure is really how much of your vaccine supply are you actually getting into arms? Are you actually distributing? And that's where we're doing really well. So it looks like the demand is pretty high still, and we're doing well in terms of getting the vaccines that we have in the state distributed. But as I said, it's frustrating because we just don't have much vaccine to distribute. And that's the case nationwide. That's the holdup, which, there's a lot of blame to go around, but I'm hoping that with the Biden administration that we can speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, there's blame, but it's also been kind of an amazing process in a strange, I know we wish it was going quicker, but it's still kind of neat how we developed, vaccines on technology that really didn't exist, and people already have it by now. Cause at the beginning of the pandemic, they're like, it may be years, we don't know. So, we all want that
technology, shot. Yeah, the technology behind the vaccine, behind Pfizer and Moderna, at least, the mRNA, the messenger RNA, it's really cool to read about. And that was because I was the same, thinking, man, this seems rushed. I don't know if I trust this vaccine that has been developed in less than a year, and then after doing some reading about the science and the technology behind it, and seeing that this technology has been on for a while, but they haven't really had an area where they needed to use it. So in creating this new vaccine, they had that opportunity, and it works really well. So it's pretty cool. The immune system is a really complex, incredible thing, and the way that they've been able to come up with this vaccine is pretty incredible also.
So let's say you're not interested in the vaccine though, but you want some hydroxychloroquine. Do you know where we could get like roughly $2 million worth of it?
I know. Yeah.
We're prepared for malaria outbreak.
Well, from my perspective, I feel like we should just be donating that to something, to a country that needs it, or to, patients here in the state who need it because of autoimmune diseases, things like that. But instead, we're like trying to take it back to the store and get a refund. Like, I don't think that's how it works.
That's something we say that a lot about Oklahoma.
Yeah.
On that note, speaking of, I'm not sure this is how it works. Legislative session is kicked off. You lead the Democratic Minority Caucus, which is, I think, how many of you are left? There's a dozen.
There are 19 of us.
19. Are you are you guys a super minority then, I guess?
Yes. Yeah, we have been for a while. The super majority threshold is 68 members, and the Republicans have been at 68 for about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
From the Democratic perspective, I know once again you have to work with the majority people, but like, what are some of the priorities that you guys have for this legislative session?
You know, generally, as the minority party, I think our top priority is always keeping the majority, holding them accountable, making them be transparent about what they're doing, and giving a voice to people who don't normally have a voice in that building, who can't afford a lobbyist, who don't have a whole lot of power or money. That's where we come in, I think, in making sure that that voice is heard as well. But in terms of specific policy priorities, you know, we're going to continue to work on some criminal justice reform measures. We've made a lot of progress on that, but we still rank pretty high in terms of per capita incarceration rates. And so we want to keep chipping away at that. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of just funding core services. It's going to be another tough budget year. And this is my 11th year at the Capitol, and it seems like every year we're sort of budgeting and governing by crisis. We don't ever get out of whatever crisis struck us last time, and then we're on to the next one. And there's this mentality that we are a poor state and that we just don't have enough money to fund core services the way that we should. And I wholeheartedly reject that. We have other states that are similar to Oklahoma who are doing a lot better in terms of taking care of people. And if there's one thing that COVID has highlighted, it's that we need a strong safety net, because you never know when people who have never accessed government services before might be accessing them for the first time. Mm-hmm. Then we also have work to do on healthcare, of course. We have to fund Medicaid expansion, and we need to do that in a responsible way. We heard a lot of what I think were scare tactics and fear mongering in terms of how we were going to fund Medicaid expansion if it passed. You heard a lot of people saying we're going to have to cut education, we're going to have to cut public safety if Medicaid expansion passes. Doesn't look like we're going to have to do that because there are other revenue streams that we can access, and we have growth since the budget hole is not as large as was predicted. So we're not.
We just have like a regular budget hole. We don't have like a massive one this time around. Just a normal Oklahoma budget hole.
Yeah, it's just like a few $100 million instead of $1 billion.
Oh wow, we're rich.
Yeah,
that's kind of like I only have $5,000 in credit card debt right now. It's like whoa,
exactly.
as opposed to 20 or whatever.
Right.
Can you explain, like, you were talking about the healthcare, the Medicare expansion and all that stuff? I worked in healthcare before I became whatever I do now, and it didn't make sense to me then. And some of this stuff, like, people are complaining, doctors, Republicans, Democrats, about something about managed care or the way that we're contracting out services. You're a smart lawyer. Can you explain this in like for simpletons like Marisa and I?
Sure. So this is one of the, I think, hot button issues this legislative session. So there are a few different just delivery methods for healthcare, especially for those who are served by Medicaid in the state. So we have what's called the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority that serves as pretty much an insurance company for people who are on Medicaid. And so they administer the Medicaid program, and we have a fee-for-service model, meaning that someone goes to a doctor that accepts Medicaid patients. That doctor bills the healthcare.
You've already lost me. I mean, I'm already confused by the
and
whole.
They pay it. So I know. Just bear with me. We'll get there. I'll use smaller words.
Okay, thank you. Can you use like sports analogies to explain it? That's sometimes works.
You know, I don't know what a good analogy would be.
It's like, so you have a center fielder, right? And okay, never mind. I'll shut up. I'll listen. Anyway. I'll pay attention to the teacher. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, focus. So what managed care would do is bring in a third-party private company that would manage the program instead of healthcare authority. So what these managed care companies do, they're private companies. They, in order to make a profit, they have to cut down on healthcare costs somewhere. So what they will tell you is that they do that by getting better health outcomes and by people not getting sick as much. What the opponents of managed care will say is that they do it by simply cutting rates to providers. So the doctors just don't get paid as much for seeing Medicaid patients. And then a lot of the doctors will just stop taking Medicaid, and that'll cut down on access for patients who are on Medicaid. So, there's a lot that is going on in this sort of power struggle. But that's the important thing to know, I think, is that it is a power struggle because the governor has done this on his own. He's instructed the healthcare authority to do this. They've selected a few companies to administer the program, and he hasn't told the legislature or asked the legislature, I guess I should say, for our permission to do anything. And that's within his power. I mean, he can do that. My Republican colleagues gave him the power to do that, and I think they're regretting it now because they've made him very powerful, and this is what happens. So the power struggle will come to a head, I think, when we are talking about funding the Medicaid program, because the legislature has the power of the purse, and we get to decide how the money is spent. And so it could be one of those big nerdy fights for you all to watch.
Yeah. So really it is one of those examples of it's a complicated issue. And that's probably when people go vote, it's why you should vote for people who are kind of good thinkers, able to handle complicated issues and make good decisions, as opposed to people who just run on wedge issues that, kind of spur and ignite voters, I would imagine. Marisa, are you pro Medicaid? Are you pro getting hiring it to the private sector types, or do you want the state to do it? Did I do that? Is that the right question? Would that be a good one to ask about it?
Yeah, very good.
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I see potential for both. However, I'm naturally distrustful of the private sector, having been a part of the private sector as an employee for a really long time. But also, there are some legislators that I just don't know if I want to. Well, I mean, legislators specifically wouldn't have control, but I do think that some state agencies, I don't know,
that's
how hamstrung would they become based on, the way that things were structured. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a good answer, you know?
That's true. It's like you don't see good news. You very rarely see, good news coming out of the Oklahoma Health Department this week. Look at these. I guess it's kind of which, is it a pick your poison thing? Is that the wrong way to put it? Or pick your maybe opioid, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, like Marisa said, I see positives to a company that might be incentivized to get people to be healthier, but is that what they really do? And we had Medicaid managed care in the 90s. That's what a lot of people will tell you. We had this in the 90s and it was a disaster. And what ended up happening was you just had a ton of providers who stopped taking Medicaid, which is bad. We don't want people to not have access to a lot of different providers. So, but what the managed care companies will tell you now is that they're completely different companies than they were in the 90s. And they talk a lot about treating the whole person and helping with housing and transportation and reentry programs for those who were formerly incarcerated. So, that speaks my language. That's appealing to me. But it's hard to know if that's what will actually happen.
Guess we'll find out eventually. I'm sure either way there'll be a lot of people complaining about whichever side wins out. I'm sure that for the next how many years people are going to be complaining about it. Another topic people like to complain about that I want to get your thoughts on is the whole thing with schools and the pandemic.
Schools, what are those?
School, yeah, right. Remember when kids, like when I was a kid, I would go to school. Now it's like now kids apparently don't do that, and I see why. I have a daughter; she's 2.5, so she's not at that school age. But even pulling her out of daycare, since March and April, as a parent, I do sometimes wonder, is like are we fucking with her development here? She's not, she liked going to school, playing with her friends, and now she doesn't get to do that. How does that affect her just at the age of 2.5? So I can see why some parents, their 7-year-old, their 10-year-old, their high school senior, missing out on that learning. Then again, there's a global pandemic. I don't blame teachers for not wanting to go to school, and I don't blame parents for not wanting to send their kids to school. Then again, a teacher, it's a public service thing, right? You're not doing it for the money. You do it because you love teaching. Should teachers be making that sacrifice to go to school?
Put your life on the line, teachers.
For that $35K a year.
I don't know. The cashier at Sprouts is, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that are out, essential workers. Like, why aren't teachers given that same status? I guess that's where I see it's a complex issue.
Every day is like a super spreader event.
Right. I'm just saying it's like that for go talk to the guys at the meatpacking plant up in Guyman. So what are, once again, it's a big complex issue. I don't know what it is. Once again, my kid, we haven't sent her back to daycare, but her mom and I are in positions where we can kind of co-parent, and we kind of make our own schedules to a degree. So most of my afternoons are blocked off to.
So wait, you think teachers should be back in class, but you're not even sending your kid to daycare?
No. I said I don't know. I guess what I kind of see I see kind of all the arguments, both for and against it. And it seems like it's become political. I swear there probably has to be a poll out there saying that Oklahomans are maybe for sending kids back. So now you have Governor Stitt and his community. Yeah, his new communications troll came after you on Twitter. I saw that. I can remember her name. He hired some firebrand little young whippersnapper to come in and troll everyone on social media now. So he's obviously for it. Probably I would assume for polling, or just because he's Kevin Stitt and always seems to take the wrong side. But I don't care about his thoughts. I want Emily's.
Well, like you said, it's just not that simple. It's not kids have to be back in school or kids should all be home. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it, and there are really, really worthy, passionate arguments on both sides. And the question is not whether we want kids to be in school. Everyone recognizes that kids should be in school, ideally. I find it ironic that someone like Kevin Stitt, who has been really supportive of virtual charters, all these non-traditional educational methods, that now he's saying that face-to-face instruction is essential when he sent a bunch of pandemic relief money to non-face-to-face instruction institutions. So what that tells me is I think you're right, Patrick, that this is driven by polling. And of course, those people who are being polled really want their kids back in school. And I get that. And it's easy for me to say that because I don't have kids. I've seen the effects that it's had on my oldest niece is 6. She's in 1st grade. And I've seen the effects that it's had on her. I mean, she just hasn't, none of the kids have been able to keep up the way that they should have. But I also think that kids are really resilient and that they will find a way to catch up, and teachers the same way. But it's really hard to tell a teacher who is making, as Marisa said, $35,000 a year that, no, you need to go risk your life to do your job. And Patrick, like you said, there are a lot of people who are risking their lives right now to do their jobs, and that's not lost on me either. But the thing that we have to remember is that the schools being open is not necessarily contributing to increases in case numbers. It's the reverse. It's the increases in case numbers are causing schools to close down. So we get the pandemic under control, we decrease the community spread, then schools can open. And that just seems to be lost in the conversation, that if we could control the spread of the virus communities around the schools, then it would be safer for everyone to go back to school. And there are a lot of things that you can do to make schools safer, like better, better ventilation and circulation systems that we didn't invest in with CARES Act dollars. There's hopefully one of the things that President
We
Biden
got
talked
Swadley's
about
barbecue, though. I mean,
we got $7,000
barbecue.
worth of pork, so that's good.
That's a reasonable amount of pork, I would assume. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, dear teacher, just have a rib. You'll feel better.
Yeah, right. That's all to get the teachers to go back. Hey, free Swadleys. Go back to school. Yeah. Swadleys every day. Yeah. Maybe even some Teds. Let Teds on Friday. Fajita Friday.
And the thing is, like, if you want to go back, I get that. I want them to go back too. But you have to make it safe, and that costs money. And that's where the rub seems to come in, that we want these things to happen, but we don't want to pay for them. And that's just not how this works. President Biden has talked about having aid to schools in the next stimulus package, which I think is one of the most important parts of it, because you had former President Trump talking about how schools needed to be open, but they didn't provide any resources for schools to actually be open safely.
Oklahoma, top 10 state for, whatever. Sorry. I almost.
I don't know.
Yeah, for barbecue, top 10. We're now a top 10 state. That was another article that we covered this week, that I guess that the government had issued that report. And I'm sure every state is misspent. And in all fairness, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. And, and the whole, what percentage of that was spent on Swadley's barbecue? Probably a fraction of a percent. But just the optics that you're spending CARES money that could go to people who are facing severe financial difficulties, businesses that struggle to remain open, and you're spending $7,000 on Swadley's barbecue. I can see how that. It's a good headline. It's good for internet traffic, and I can see how it pisses people off.
Also, it's not even like the best barbecue in this state. I mean, no. I'm sorry, but like,
my philosophy
sure isn't.
There's like, I think even bad barbecue is in a way good barbecue. I mean, it's like, but there's a big difference between good barbecue and just kind of average barbecue. And I would put Swadley's in that average camp. Hey, let's
agrees.
Is that my dog or Marissa's dog?
No, pizza was just delivered, and my dog is going to keep us safe. Yeah,
pizza night.
It's
pizza
National
shuttle?
Pizza Day.
Noble Pizza. Where do you go?
We did. What is it called? The Pizza Shop. It used to be JJ's when it was on Lindsay, and now it's on Constitution, and it's called the Pizza Shop. We are not a pizza shuttle house unless it is after midnight. And I think most Normanites would agree. That's because they still deliver.
I will eat pizza shuttle any time of the day.
I mean, I will too, but like, I think that's
turkey bacon twist is delicious.
I went to Oklahoma City Community College, so like when I think of pizza in college, it's like, ooh, Little Caesars, Red Baron, can't wait to get my Red Baron mini. Put in the microwave for 3 minutes, put on the little metal tray, Anyway, hey, let's take a quick break, pay some bills. Let's listen to a good ad from let's get Bricktown Rob to talk about his favorite place to buy marijuana. 3, 2, 1. Emily, do you have your medical marijuana card yet?
I don't. And I've thought about it, and I keep going back and forth because I would like to get one, but I also, there's this hesitation that I have because, of course, it is still illegal federally, and I have a license to practice law, which is regulated heavily by the state. So I don't want to like blatantly violate federal laws. I mean, not that the feds are gonna like come after you, but it's kind of a sticky situation. I know, it'd be crazy if they did.
I'd love to write about that. We had Julia Zell on the podcast last week, the former attorney for the State Department of Health, and she's an attorney as well. And she actually went to go try it for research purposes. So you could get your card and say you're doing it as like a constituent type thing to research to make sure everything's fine. I'm sure the bar, from most lawyers I know, would probably be fine with that. I don't know. It seems like.
I mean, don't take this as me saying that lawyers don't have medical marijuana cards. I am like, I don't know.
You're a rule follower.
I mean, sometimes.
I do have to say though, like if I learned anything during the Trump administration, it's that sometimes lawyers just love to ignore federal law. And like as I'm watching the impeachment, I just wonder, like, why not? So I mean, if that is the encouragement you need, like we watched Giuliani, why not?
Actually, I had a question kind of written down about that. You work in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. Going to put you on the spot. Just out of your colleagues, your fellow lawmakers, what percentage of them do you think really in the deepest of their hearts believe that the election was rigged and stolen, and probably supported or were kind of happy or fine with what happened at the Capitol back in early January?
Well, you take out the 19 Democrats, because I know that none of them agree with that. So you've got 82 Republicans in the House, and I'd say like 50 out of 82 probably.
Wow.
Maybe that's wrong, but I don't think it is.
That would kind of match up with what I would assume is probably the Oklahoma electorate to a degree, especially in the rural parts of the state. I'm sure half the people in the rural leaning Republican districts, I'm sure half of them probably think it's all rigged, that there was a sham. Does that concern you? Do you worry about stuff like that happening at the Oklahoma Capitol?
So I do, and especially after watching what happened at the U.S. Capitol and us having far less security at our Capitol than at the United States Capitol, it was pretty scary watching that. I mean, for a number of reasons, it was scary watching that. But then you think about, there were planned events at state capitals around the country. So, we got a briefing from law enforcement about how they were planning to sort of beef up security on a few days, and nothing ended up happening, which is great. But then, we then had one of our colleagues post a pretty inflammatory post that seemed to be inciting people to be very angry with one of our other colleagues. And so that brought up. Are you
talking about the Sheila Dills post, or is it about Maury Turner? We talked about that before you came on. Were people on the House floor gossiping about that, or it's like, I guess, what are your thoughts on that situation? If we can talk specifically about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really, really disappointing and frightening that you have a member in Representative Turner who's literally standing there minding their own business and standing respectfully, and someone across the chamber decides they're going to take a picture of this person and post on the internet, seemingly to just get people riled up, to get people pissed at Representative Turner. And my first thought was, you have put Representative Turner in danger, because before Representative Dills deleted the post, there were lots of comments of people being very angry. And together with what happened at the United States Capitol, it's hard not to see the similarities and to know why it's a sensitive situation right now. In talking to Representative Dills, she said that was not her intent. She didn't even think about that being a possibility. And in talking with Representative Turner, who's an incredibly wise person for being 28 years old, and but having lived through a lot of situations like this, Representative Turner was saying that's something that white people get away with a lot, by just saying, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way, or I didn't intend for that to happen. And that's just not good enough. I mean, you have your intent, but then more importantly, you have the impact of your actions. And so that's kind of a cop-out to me, just saying, oh, well, that's not what I meant to do, and I didn't think about it that way. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just not good enough.
I am one of those white people that says that a lot. Like when Marisa and I earlier, we were talking about the Norman City Council candidate, and everyone was like, but but I'm an internet troll, so I kind of have to do that more often. I'm not a state representative, it's a different thing, but that just, I don't know. And then her whole apology seemed kind of, that seemed weak. I thought Miss Turner, I thought Mohi handled it great, with her little Twitter thread where she, like, hey, I want to talk to her about it. Like, as you said, why are you singling me out? Why, just come talk to me about it or whatever.
Yeah.
I would imagine Sheila Dills is probably part of that 50% you were talking about earlier.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, Representative Dills put out a lot of press releases, calling on Oklahoma to join lawsuits to challenge the election, wanting to, investigate elections in other states, things like that. So yes, I think that Representative Dills does believe that the election was stolen or there was massive voter fraud. But, the thing that I continue to learn a lot every day, and especially from Representative Turner, just in watching them conduct themselves and knowing everything that they have gone through growing up in Oklahoma, being Muslim, Black, non-binary, queer. I can't imagine what that has been like because I come from a place of huge privilege. But I think that Representative Turner is probably one of the wisest people that we have in our legislature now, just because of all of that life experience in just 28 years.
Yeah, and she beat Jason Dunnington. Do you remember him? Are you familiar with Jason? He was one of your former Democrats. She.
Are you familiar with him, Emily?
Are you familiar with him? That guy. Didn't you guys get mad at him for something? Didn't he like leak information to Republicans? He was like a mole for the Republicans or whatever, right? Kind of. He was like the Republican mole.
That happens a lot. I mean,
you guys have do you have like moles like in the Republican Party that come to you guys and say, hey, you can't do anything about this, but this is what they're going to do? Or or they just kind of like lay out the game plan? I mean,
every year that I've been in the legislature, we have caucus meetings, and what is said in those caucus meetings is supposed to stay there, and we're not supposed to, talk about those things outside the caucus room, but it happens inevitably. And, a lot of what happens in the Capitol is just trading information. And so it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And, when this situation came up with Representative Dunnington, it was at a time when things were really, really tense and intense because we were in the middle of all of that, all those revenue raising packages, Step Up Oklahoma, things like that. And so emotions were really high. And, looking back on it, I probably think, at the time I thought, oh my God, this was such a big deal. But looking back on it, probably not that big of a deal.
That was the time when you guys did have power because of the whole supermajority rule. It was like the wacko Republicans were going to vote like, they'll never vote for a tax increase. And then you had kind of the reasonable Republicans that were like, hey, Democrats, we need your help to pass this. And you guys were like, holy shit, this is awesome. Like, we want this and this and this. And then I guess he went off and said, they want this and this and this. And so, yeah, anyway, we wish him the best of luck. He's now like a house chaplain or something like that. So good luck. We'll have to have him.
He's not the house chaplain. He was recently appointed to the board of the nonprofit, right? You wrote about that.
No, I haven't, but I saw a tweet about it. Like he's been named whatever the house chaplain program is. He's on that. So good for him. Can't wait to see what public office he runs for next. Redistricting, that's coming up. And once again, it's going to be gerrymandered to death. We're all aware of this. Like they're just going to try to rig this to give Republicans as much control as possible. And I'm just going to say that I think if roles were reversed, I would expect Democrats to do the same thing. You want to give your party, especially when you're in the party, it's like, party. You want your party to have control. So I totally expect the Republicans to do all that. And I also expect them to put on that kind of happy face, like, oh, we're being bipartisan. But the House, the Speaker of the House appointed T.W. Shannon, who is like kind of a right-wing kind of alt-right. He's on all those weird networks that are like right-wing ones that nobody watches except in clips when they want to get mad, right? Like OWN or what I don't know. Newsmax. He's on all those talking, like kind of beating the whole, it's all rigged. Trump should be president. It's the steal. He tags like QAnon in his social media post. And mind you, he's like the president of like the Chickasaw Nation's bank, which, he doesn't make sense to me. That's a whole other conversation post. But shouldn't like the Republicans at least put somebody on there who's going to like kind of rig the game, but make it at least feel that it's like kind of bipartisan? Like, are you okay having people like T.W. Shannon as part of this process?
I mean, it's unclear to me exactly what T.W. Shannon is supposed to be doing in this process. So I'll say that, I don't enjoy bringing in another person who clearly has a partisan perspective and end game in this, because that shouldn't be a part of it, but it is. But, as you said, Democrats gerrymandered back in the day as well. And one of the things that really, really frustrates me is that Democrats, when they were in power, they weren't forward thinking enough to say, all right, we're going to lose the majority someday. We need to put into place an independent redistricting commission. We need to get rid of straight party voting. We need to do all these things for the future of the state so that the pendulum won't swing quite as far the other way. But they didn't do those things. And that's unfortunate. And it's a large reason why Democrats in Oklahoma are in the position that we're in today, because Republicans are doing the things that the Democrats did when they were in the majority, even though none of us were around then. But anyway, I mean, you were, I'm not saying that like nobody here was alive. I'm saying that people who are elected in the legislature right now were not a part of those decisions. Right. And so, we're like rehashing these old battles.
What about Mike Turpin? Do you think he's a Democrat, right? Him? He's a Democrat.
Yes. Yes.
Wink, wink.
Yes.
Will the pendulum, like in another 60 years, will there be whatever podcast star in 60 years from now, or are there going to be some people talking about, oh man, the Democrats are going to load everything up. Oh, it's a shame. And is that, or is the pendulum in Oklahoma off the hook? How does it get fixed where you guys, and I say this as an registered independent who's very liberal and in kind of an anarchy libertarian sense, but I kind of like it's kind of like I rooted for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, because I don't like Tom Brady. I root for the Democrats because I just, some of those, those 50% you were talking about kind of get on my nerves. What can you guys do to get more power, to get more control?
Well, redistricting is an important part of it. Unfortunately, we didn't have independent redistricting on the ballot this last cycle, but that might be on the ballot in coming cycles. And so that would mean that districts are drawn without regard to political party or voter registration, anything like that. And so that can do a lot to balance things out. But it's not like if we had an independent redistricting commission that Democrats would have the majority. That's right. That's not the case by any means. I mean,
how do you win back voters in this state without saying elections are stolen, or like the vaccine makers want to put implants in and track our movements? Like, how do you win back these people?
That's a good question.
Right.
I don't know. I think that part of it is that a little bit of what happened in Georgia, a lot of Democrats in Oklahoma are now thinking, okay, how do we do in Oklahoma what they did in Georgia to make Georgia blue? It's very different in Oklahoma. We don't have the same demographics, but we do have a lot of people who are not participating in the democratic process. They're not voting. They're either not registered to vote, or they're registered, but they don't vote. So like I think governor. Yeah, one of them could be governor very soon. Who knows? But I think one thing we have to do as Democrats is reach out to those people who are not traditionally involved in politics at any level, and show them why they should be involved, or at least talk to them about the issues that are important to them. Because one thing that we've sort of had to reckon with is that when we campaign as state legislators, we only go talk to the people who are registered to vote and who vote regularly. And I think that has been one of the mistakes, is that we haven't focused enough on getting new people registered to vote and involving people in the process who are not traditionally involved. That's one thing that Georgia taught us, was that voter registration matters a great deal. And Texas, with Beto O'Rourke's organization, did the same thing. We're not Georgia or Texas, but we do have a pretty low voter participation rate. And we have a lot of obstacles to voting. And so, you hear a lot about Oklahoma's election system being very secure, and it is. But in my opinion, that has been the value, is whether it's secure or not whether it's easy to access that system. So we've got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do as a party. It's the thing that keeps me awake at night, is that I firmly believe that what we're fighting for is better for the majority of Oklahomans than what the Republicans are fighting for right now. The problems that we see every day, we have proposals to fix those. We want better access to healthcare. We want people to be able to make it economically. We want good schools. We talk more about attracting businesses in terms of quality of life issues, rather than tax incentives, things like that. So it breaks my heart to see people who are only paying attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C., and continually voting for people at the state capitol who don't have their best interests at heart, and who are continuing to vote for policies that oppress a large number of Oklahomans.
Well, it's a good thing the Democrats have power, so you can get that. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry.
Thanks.
I'll stop being.
Never coming back on this show.
That's probably a wise choice, honestly.
Hopefully, well, I mean, if we're even around,
yeah, I might come back because of Marisa, but definitely not because of you.
That's fair. That's very fair.
We'll just talk about our favorite Mike Hosty lyrics, and
Yes, I actually I have one of, during COVID, because Hosty has not really been able to perform as much. He sort of upped his game on merch, and you could do this thing where you could buy handwritten Hosty lyrics.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I bought some Hosty lyrics, and they're hanging up in my office now at the Capitol.
Love it.
One final question before you go spend time with your niece. This was a Twitter question. When you're done working in the legislature, what state office are you going to run for? That's what people want to know. And I think you should. And I will vote for you. I will be a Virgin supporter if you run for a statewide office and can vote for you. So what are you going to run for? Governor?
I don't know.
Corporation Commission.
I don't know if I'm going to run for anything. I started in the legislature when I was 24, and it's sort of a weird way to spend your early adult years. So I may want to just go do something else for a little while.
Private practice. There we go. A consultant.
There
we go.
Yeah,
Cha-ching.
those consultants, that's where the money is, apparently. I can't really figure out how to get into that. But, if you know how, let me know.
Well, I'll share my secrets, and I'll send you the audiobook. You can buy it online and all that stuff. Perfect. Thanks again for doing this. I guess we'll maybe, since you're never coming on again, I guess this will be our final. Farewell.
Bye.
Goodbye. All right. See you. Bye-bye. That was fun, Marisa.
That was good.
I like Emily Virgin. I think she's nice, kind of down to earth.
Mm-hmm. She's like a human, and I don't think we get that from a lot of our representatives in the state of Oklahoma.